Gulf and Western maintains that it is doing everything in its power to improve conditions for its employees in the Dominican Republic. And it points out that the former Dominican government welcomed the company because its sugar operation is an important source of foreign earnings to the country. Well, perhaps. Gulf and Western argue that the problems caused by its policies go beyond the plight of undernourished children, and the positive aspects of earnings generated are outweighed by other factors which hinder the development of the Dominican economy. For example, Gulf and Western owns or controls approximately 1/10 of the country's farmable land and uses it mainly to grow sugar cane and to graze the company's 45,000 head of cattle. Meanwhile, the majority of the population suffers from a lack of nutritional food which could be grown on that land. The Dominican Republic is a country where for the past 20 years, the per-person food production, excluding sugar, has decreased, while the amount of land under sugarcane has doubled. Gulf and Western is the largest company in the Dominican Republic. Its assets are greater than the entire Dominican gross national product. So the company must play an important role in influencing Dominican development policy. But in the area of the worker, there have been serious objections to Gulf and Western's labor policy. Despite the fact that sugar prices at times have risen over 1,500% over the last decade, Gulf and Western cane cutters earned more in real wages in 1968 than they did in 1978. One reason is that the cane cutters union was destroyed, while Gulf and Western was in the process of buying out the South Puerto Rico Sugar Company. Then there's the tourist business. From the point of view of the personal dignity of the Dominican worker, whose wages are very low, and who in turn must serve the tourist, there are strong objections to Gulf and Western's heavy investments in tourism, and the company's efforts to turn the Caribbean country into a playground for the rich.
Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. Thursday, Friday, happy days. Saturday, what a day. Rock and roll week with you.
The United States government has twice launched military invasions of the Dominican Republic in this century alone. Many Dominicans interviewed feared that U.S. business interests, including those of Gulf and Western, create the conditions for still a third intervention, perhaps of a military sort, perhaps not. In August 1978, a new Dominican government, that of Antonio Guzman, was inaugurated. His campaign promises included an end to the police and military repression that were the hallmarks of the former Dominican president Joaquin Balaguer, who, following the 1965 U.S. Marine invasion, and until his defeat in 1978, received from the United States the highest per capita assistance for police training of any Latin American nation. The National Police and the National Army under Balaguer was widely accused of continuous police repression and atrocities against the Dominican people. It would be improper to hold Gulf and Western to blame for all the problems besetting the Dominican Republic. Although President Guzman promised in his electoral campaign to review all contracts and agreements with foreign companies, his policy toward Gulf and Western was still not determined 3 months after the inauguration. Nonetheless, it seems clear that the company's presence and policies have contributed to a situation of increased suffering for large numbers of innocent people since 1967.
Sé que antes del odio fue el amor
stockholders would not intentionally cause hurt to a child? Why is it that Gulf and Western continues to expand and develop its Dominican operation under the heavy criticism by many sectors of the Dominican society? The answer is simple, and it can be stated in 3 words. And that same answer applies in general to all multinationals operating in underdeveloped countries. The 3-word answer is maximization of profit. Maximization of profit. Gulf and Western behaves the way it does in the Dominican Republic in order to maximize profits. It makes all decisions and all company policies for its Dominican operation in the name of profit, just like it makes movies in the name of profit. And it sells cigars in the name of profit. And it owns Madison Square Garden, the New York Knicks, Roosevelt Raceway, and the New York Rangers in order to maximize profits. So it is in the name of profit that Gulf and Western owns a sugar mill in the Dominican Republic. And it can be said that even the charitable works of which the company boasts are done ultimately in the name of profit. So also is the hurt suffered by the Dominican people suffered in the name of profit. For is it not for maximization of profits that cane cutters' earning power is less today than it was 10 years ago, even with massive increases in the price of sugar on the world market? Is it not for maximization of profits that Gulf and Western advertises an unlimited labor force with unskilled employees earning 40 cents per hour in an effort to attract foreign manufacturers to rent space in the company-owned and controlled tax-free zone? Is it not maximization of profits that drives a company to use hundreds of thousands of acres of farmable land to grow sugar and beef in a country where hunger and malnutrition is a way of life for over 70% of the people? And while it is true that sugar products bring much-needed foreign exchange to the Dominican Republic, how does a company whose assets are greater than the gross national product of the Dominican Republic justify the fact that the poor and the hungry are receiving a smaller portion of income each year? There are many more unanswered questions that deal with land use, employment practices, labor relations, political tie-ins, as well as the sheer impact of a company such as Gulf and Western has on the Dominican society and its development. Whatever the moral integrity of the men and women who have power over Gulf and Western, they owe it to those who suffer under its power to ask these questions. For the Gulf and Western Corporation, as a legal entity acting as an impersonal bureaucracy committed only to profit, seems indifferent to what the profit costs in human terms. And those men and women who are therefore held responsible to ask such questions include not merely Charles Bluthorn and his colleagues in management, and not merely the company's 45,000 shareholders, but also the millions of others who make Gulf and Western possible by going to its movies, eating its candy, reading its books, smoking its cigars, and sprinkling their cornflakes with Gulf and Western sugar. Guess who's coming to breakfast? In the Dominican Republic, where most people can afford to eat only 1 meal a day, no one comes to breakfast. Why? In your house each morning, you have guests who can tell you why.
Oh, really?
Ask them.